All right, everybody, welcome to Lone Star Gun Talk. I am your host, as always, Derek Wills, and I am very glad to be here. So, if you heard my podcast last week, I was talking about how I wanted to start a dialogue with people about gun control. I wanted to have that conversation with anybody that wanted to have it, and more than a few responses. Uh, we had some from and I don't say this to be insulting, but from the extreme right, basically the Second Amendment purists out there like myself, but who are parts of organized militias, as well as some moderates. And I reached out to some gun control groups, like hardcore gun control groups, like Moms Demand Action, Every Town for Gun Reforms in America. You name it, I contacted them, and I was ignored the entire time. So I'm still trying to get somebody that's hardcore left of this issue to come on the program, but haven't gotten it there yet. But I do have Layton here, and Layton is a follower of ours, and he reached out and said that he's not very super pro gun control, but he is kind of a moderate on this issue. So, Layton, welcome to Lone Star Gun Talk, sir.
Thank you for having me.
So you're my guest here, and I want to extend you the courtesy of basically just tell us about your philosophies, what you think, and we'll just kind of take it from there.
Well, for starters, I mean, we all know what's going around nationwide, and obviously, whether it's stricter background checks and all the crazy add-ons that they want to add to school, which costs a significant amount of money. So the problem becomes more than just, or like an easy way to a lot of people can just pinpoint gun control, and that might not be the necessary solution, just because some people grow up in Kentucky, shooting guns their whole life, Texas their whole life since they were 8. You know what I mean? Then there's people like me, for example, who have never even shot a long gun or a rifle or anything until I got to boot camp. So now that I've been trained and I know how to, break it apart, use it, function it. I know all the, rules and regulations. So now I'm a little bit more open-minded to it, of course.
Right, but you still support some forms of gun control in this country.
I mean, just like everything, yes, you have to have control, or else it'll just create chaos as it's done.
Okay, so if you were king of the United States and you could wave a magic wand around and say, these are the gun regulations that are at the federal level, state level, what have you, what exactly would that look like?
So, like, which ones would I agree with? Which ones would I change?
Basically, how would you enact gun control if it was completely up to you?
Well, I mean, I'd stick with pretty much the basics and keep it as black and white as it is. I would just make a few modifications. Like I was telling you before, they didn't even use a breathalyzer whenever I went and bought a gun. You know what I mean? And that was from Academy. Any 18-year-old that doesn't have parents around, he's sitting around having a few beers, and then he just decides to drive to Academy. Oh, I have $1,000. Money's not a problem. Let me go buy a gun. So that's my problem. I'm not necessarily saying that that's the solution, lowering it to raising the age to 21 to buy a gun, but there's just other considerations that have to be considered.
Do you think that it should be mandatory to have a breathalyzer before you purchase a firearm?
So that's a new idea in my head. I just because I was thinking that it was pretty nuts that they didn't even breathalyze me. You know what I mean? Whether I had 2 beers or 8 beers, and obviously it's up to the the attendee to know. Okay, well, this guy's impaired, I guess. So, but at the end of the day, a breathalyzer doesn't cost that much. You get it calibrated once a month, and the little capsules that you blow into, you literally just punch them out. So it's a pretty affordable fix.
Do you think that is an issue of people walking into gun shops drunk to buy a gun?
And that's the thing. I haven't looked at the numbers for it, but I'm very interested to find that information, because I do want to. I do wonder how many of these assaults and shootings and all that happen while people are intoxicated.
Are you talking about the things like mass shootings? What happened in Florida and in Sutherland Springs? Are you saying that, or are you suggesting that they might have been intoxicated when they got their weapons?
I'm talking about really any like negative situation that is related to guns, because I mean, worse or like things happen other than like school shootings and stuff, which is they're all evil. You know what I mean? And we need to get rid of them. Obviously, that's what the rules are for. But
Well, I, I don't think that I'm a pretty big statistical nerd. That's one of my bread and butter things. It's just something that I love doing. I love gathering numbers, looking at it from a completely analytical standpoint. But I don't even know that something like that is tracked by anybody because as far as I can tell, it's not really an issue. I'm sure that if you were to go into any random gun shop, be it academy, a local mom and pop gun shop, and you were to ask them, "Hey, how often do you get somebody who's obviously intoxicated coming in here wanting to buy a gun?" I'm sure they would probably look at you a little funny. What do you think?
well, I agree with you because I mean, if I like I said, if I walked in and they knew I was heavily intoxicated, then yeah, there's a problem. But I mean, people can. I mean, people have a tolerance, and I mean, they can drink 8 beers. I'm just saying that it's not. And who knows? Like you're saying, it might not be like a huge problem, but I just know a breathalyzer. I mean, just to ensure, because all we want is we want guarantees, and just to guarantee that no one is buying a firearm with any alcohol in their on their breath. Like that. That's fair. And yeah, that might not be. That's not the be all get all solution, but I mean that it's a step.
Okay, so from just a standpoint of we don't want people who are intoxicated to purchase a firearm, um, do you think that there are, and you said that it's not really a problem, so why would we apply a fix to something that's not a problem?
I mean, we don't know that it's a problem. I mean, if you don't breathalyze them, how do you know? You know what I mean? And I get it. Like no one, if they're drunk and they're not doing anything, sure. But I mean, you can play the what if games forever.
Right.
So it's like, and I'm just preventable steps are what we're trying to create. We're trying to create steps to implement them so that these shootings and just anything to help out the situation.
Okay. So let's take this a slight step further because we know that alcohol wears off in a matter of hours. Um, so now somebody who is sober has purchased their firearm, they blew into their breathalyzer, and they made the sale. Are we now going to stipulate that and mandate by law that we have to have a gun safe that is operated by breath, and before they can open their gun safe they have to blow into, basically like to start your car for somebody who's had a DUI, they have to prove that they're sober before they can grab the gun that they now own? Is that what you would like to see on the back end of that?
Not at all. Not at all.
Okay,
That
so
that's just
go ahead.
that's just getting a little too like yeah, no, that you're in your own castle at that point. And so
So I guess
they're
what's
game
the
to argue that.
difference between point of sale versus every other time after that?
My thing is just anything to like I said, slow them down, help out the solution. Like I know that the thing is you can't legislate evil. These guys, they want to create chaos no matter what the rules are, and so that's why we need to have anything to make it harder, a drawn out process. That's why when President Trump said that when he'll take he's going to take the guns away as soon as they start talking to you instead of waiting until you get charged. And it's just they're doing it just so literally they can just stop it as quick as possible and delay any kind of chaos like that.
Okay.
That's that's what I think.
Okay, so do you feel that law enforcement should be able to say, "Oh, this guy's carrying a firearm. It's clear as day. He's open carrying a firearm." Should that officer either have the legal duty or at minimum the legal authority to approach them and detain them until they can pass a breathalyzer?
Well, no, because I mean, I'm I can have my firearm on me as long as I'm not acting impaired, and as long as I'm not above point zero 0.08. And so I think if he sees me at a bar drinking and I'm allowed to open carry, and then you know what I mean, and then that point you're just coming up to me looking for trouble, like you're just trying to I have a target on me, and so that's why you know what I mean, because he doesn't know if that's my third beer, so at that point he's just trying to play a game. You know what I mean?
Okay, so well, my confusion is because all of these other scenarios where it would be more likely the case, and that's not really a it's not really a good choice of words because I don't think it's an issue at all because the vast majority of gun owners are incredibly responsible. Those who do drink when they're carrying, they don't drink while they're carrying.
Absolutely.
Um, so I guess my confusion is why I just don't understand why you would want to implement breathalyzers at the point of sale for a firearm. It just doesn't seem to click for me.
Like I said, I just know. I mean, how cheap breathalyzers are. I mean, they're like $80, $60. Get them calibrated every month. Probably costs you $100. All the plastic mouthpieces, they aren't bad. It Yeah, it might be far fetched, but like I said, if you can stop one person, then hey, it worked. It did its job.
Okay. Well, let's move on. I don't really particularly care for the if it saves one life argument, and I kind of went into why last week, so I'm not going to go into that. But what other forms of gun control would you like to see?
Yeah, well, for starters, yeah, no. If I'm carrying a gun in public, I ensure I never have a drink. Just wanted to make that clear for the record. Because yeah, you're just a liability at that point. It could be, you know. Um, Another thing that whenever I was taking my license to carry course, they were showing us the numbers, and the percentage is so small of the people that are involved in these assaults that have their license to carry. So the way like the instructor was telling us, he was like, he was preaching to us that we're the good guys because we went through all the paperwork and everything. So maybe, I mean, maybe a lot of people should get their license to carry.
Now, you do know that one of our main missions at Lone Star Gun Rights is to enact constitutional carry in Texas, right?
Yeah.
Okay, and you're familiar with what that is.
I mean, I've done a little bit of my research, but
Well,
not verbatim.
yeah, okay, it's that's fine. That's why we're having this conversation. Basically, we believe that the Second Amendment is a right and not a privilege, and because it's a right, the government doesn't have the authority to license it. We would like to implement what we call constitutional carry, which is it basically affirms your right to keep and bear arms without having to first seek permission from the government. So you wouldn't have to get a license in order to carry your handgun on you. Currently, you can carry a long gun of any type on your person without any form of licensing. You can carry your AR platform, you can carry a shotgun, a Remington 700, throw it over your back. You can carry that on you through downtown Fort Worth without any legal issues. You'll get looked at, and you might have a cop approach you every now and again, but you can legally carry a long gun without a license. And we think that that should also apply to handguns because it's our right to keep and bear arms, not our right to keep and bear rifles. So we don't want the state of Texas to mandate that you have to get a license in order to carry. Do you support that idea? Or do you think that licensing should be mandatory?
So I I agree with both, but I'm going to give you one answer. So I would say the reason why I would be against it. I love the fact that it's all right, it's awesome, but unfortunately, not everyone is like me, and I get it. Not everyone. If you don't, a lot of people don't want the guns, but Not everyone has the the expertise with weapons that maybe me or you do. And so I feel comfortable raising the age to 18 and people being able to constitutional carry that were trained, they know what they're doing. And I understand that people, they turn 18, they want to teach themselves how to buy a gun or shoot a gun, and but at the end of the day, it's not hard to get a license to carry. It took me 3 weeks, and so it's like, what's the rush? Like, why?
Okay,
I
so
just feel like,
here's a perfect scenario, and this isn't a far fetched hypothetical. It's actually something that has happened, where you have a single mom who is going through a very bad divorce or breakup, has a restraining order filed against her ex, and she doesn't have her license to carry. This is just a spur of the moment thing. Things got out of hand in the relationship, and now she has to defend. She worries about him coming around and doing something. Doesn't know what that is, but fears him coming around. Well, without constitutional carry, she now has to go 3, 4, 5, 6 weeks until that comes in the mail before she could really leave her house knowing that she's protected. Because otherwise, it's illegal for her to walk outside of her house and outside of her car with a firearm on her. So she's limited to protection in her car and in her house. So that's a perfect example as to why somebody needs, their right affirmed by the state government, and that it shouldn't be licensed. Not to mention that it's our right and not a privilege.
yeah, that is a very good point, and I agree with you. And I don't know how far fetched this would be, but maybe they could do, uh, you know, situations. Because obviously, if on paper, if I'm a female, if I'm 20 years old, I have 2 kids. For whatever reason, I'm divorced, and I have a restraining order against my ex-husband. Then yes, the government needs to, or whoever, whether it's state or government level, whoever decides. I mean, yeah, you can do scenarios like that, and if they meet all the right steps and they meet protocol, then sure, they can do that.
What about the cases where restraining orders aren't yet involved? Because we all know how fast the speed of government is. You said
Oh
you
yeah,
you said you were in the Marine Corps, right?
yes sir.
Okay. So, being part of the Marine Corps, I was in the Navy and I know how long it took just to order parts, just to order rags, things like that. And, it took a long time for an essential process to get done. Not to mention, you look at every other aspect of government in our lives where we have civil litigations going on for years before they're settled. We have licenses to carry, which have taken months, plural, months to fulfill. If you've ever owned an NFA weapon, suppressor, short barreled rifle, it's taken over a year in some cases.
Hmm.
The speed of government is not exactly efficient. Not to mention that if you were to implement a kind of hardship thing, you know, a restraining order might not come through by the time she needs to protect herself. And it might, a restraining order is just a piece of paper. And it's still, according to what you have laid out, like a hardship type thing, it would still require a judge's approval, which, if you have an anti gun judge, would probably rule against it.
Yeah, yeah, you're absolutely right. It's all about timing, and obviously, in these situations, time is against us.
Right. And that's kind of my point, is that the fact that the government has the authority to say, yes, you can, no, you can't, that's a problem for us. Because what kind of a right do we have if we are waiting on the government to give us the okay?
Right? That takes away from being able to have your rights.
I have a question for you. It's somewhat personal. The only reason that I'm asking this is so I know how to approach my next line of questioning. Do you believe in God?
I do.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So we can approach this from a spiritual standpoint. I believe that our right to bear arms comes from God, not from government. And it roots itself in our right to self-defense and in defense of others. We don't, or we have the right to not be killed or assaulted or robbed by anybody else. But it's up to us to ensure that sort of protection. Because that right to bear arms comes from an authority above government, I do not believe that the government has the ability or should have the ability to supersede that authority and then start licensing it out. Do you feel the same way?
I support. Yeah, I support that. I could agree with that.
Okay, so if you do agree with that, then all of your everything that you've said about we should enact breathalyzers, we should make sure that everybody has a license, things like that, it kind of shoots that whole logic out of the water, don't you think?
Yeah, but I mean, and I get it. It's a right, but I'm just the whole breathalyzer thing. I'm just saying to just any step, any because these metal detectors and all these crazy cameras. I mean, they cost millions of dollars to put them in millions of schools nationwide. You know,
I don't think
so
though that the vast majority of people walking into gun-free zones and shooting the places up or intoxicated at the point of no, they might be high on something, but I don't think that they were at the point of sale. Keep in mind, the shooting in Florida was incredibly premeditated, as have almost all of the recent shootings have been incredibly
right,
premeditated. They made the decision days, weeks, months
yeah,
before. I'm going to kill people. So I don't think alcohol is going to change that. They've made that decision at some point and stuck with it throughout sobriety and intoxication, all the way up until the time they executed that plan to kill a whole bunch of people. Because of that, I don't see how it's justifiable or correct to even implement such a rule that infringes upon our rights. What do you think?
yeah. I mean, I I just know it's not. It's a somewhat cheap um, rule that they could implement. So, but yeah, no, it's not. It's a short term. It's a to stop it in the moment in the out. You know what I mean? Like, so it's you're protected for one day by that.
Really, you're only protected up until the point of sale because after that, what's to stop them from going to get blitzed?
Right. Exactly. And that's all. Like, and I said for the day, as in, if I start drinking, then I go up there, fill breathalyzer. Well, boom, I can't get it that day. So, but I mean, if yeah, which it takes a couple hours to get the alcohol off your breath. So who knows? But
What
do you
about?
know?
I'm sorry. Go
Do
ahead.
you know? Do you know what gun was like what assault weapon was used whenever the Second Amendment was wrote? Like what guns they were using?
Yes,
What were they?
the military arm at the time was a muzzle-loading musket.
And it shot like 3 rounds per minute, correct?
Depending on how fast you could reload, probably.
And so, and that's what I'm saying is kind of crazy too. Is and this I'm not. This is just me wanting to talk about it because I think it's crazy because I was talking to buddies about it the other day. Whenever I thought about it, and whenever the Second Amendment was wrote, the civilian version, the most lethal civilian version, that was 2 rounds per minute. Like you said, depending on how fast you can load. But now, I mean, now it's 45 to 60 rounds per minute, depending on how fast you can pull the trigger, and 200 plus rounds per minute. If you're using a machine gun in the military. So that's just where I think that
Oh, okay,
our
so sorry to interrupt. However, That's a common misnomer, is that all of these sorts of the weapon platforms back in the day were the reason that we had this, and that our founders didn't understand the advancements that would come. And I'm not trying to put words into your mouth, but this is the common argument that stems from what you just said, is that our founders couldn't have known what technological advances could have come out of the firearm tech, so to speak, in 1787. Um, that's not entirely true. There is something I would love for you to research on your own time. It's called the Belton flintlock. That's the one that I like the most. But there is also the Puckle gun, and there are a couple others out there. The Belton flintlock was a repeating flintlock weapon that was actually proposed to the Continental Congress in 1777. It was he tried to sell it to Congress to help their war efforts against the British. What this did is it was kind of like a Roman candle type of flintlock, and this is a quote from the proceedings. It was capable of firing up to, quote, 16 or 20 balls in 16, 10, or 5 seconds of time. That was presented to Congress, and Congress was able to actually demonstrate it, or have it demonstrated it to them. They were able to see this type of weapon. And keep in mind, this is 1777. This is 10 years before the adoption of the Constitution, and 14 years from the adoption of what became the Second Amendment. And a lot of people that were in Congress at this time had a lot to do with the Bill of Rights. They were able to see this. Now, the reason Congress didn't buy it at the time is because they were already so heavily in debt to France and all of their other war efforts that they were trying to, they're fighting the most powerful army in the planet at the time. They didn't have the resources to buy it, but they did see that it was what the future of weapon tech was. So to say that they didn't is false. And another thing is the battles of Lexington and Concord, the start of our revolution. The reason that we were able to win those battles, which, in my opinion, from a historical perspective, led us to victory because it started our momentum in the right way. The thing that made us win those battles is because private people owned small cannons. The artillery that we were allowed to return fire with against the British helped us win the war because they were not expecting that sort of fight from us. And so not only were weapon advances being made and being presented to Congress before the ratification of the Second Amendment, but also people were owning artillery. Basically, to suggest that our founding fathers had no idea as to how weapons would evolve in the future is historically false. What do you think?
I see how just like anything they could project their product and be like, yes, obviously these weapons with technology is going to grow. Now, did they think it was going to be able to shoot 45, 60 rounds per minute? I don't know, but I mean, they can. And so you think, I mean, like I said, I agree with both sides, but I just don't believe that I should have, a 30 round magazine with an AR and just be able to have it strapped on my shoulder, walking to the park.
Do you support magazine capacity restrictions?
So that's also new to me. So, because to be honest, I don't know how many like magazines, how much ammo you're allowed to have on you. Like, so
There's
since you're allowed
there's
to,
currently no law that says that you're only able to have X amount of rounds on you.
okay, so I can have a backpack full of mags, and then I can have a 30 round clip inside my AR.
Yes.
And so, I mean, other than to literally defend yourself against, a terrorist threat or something going on in your community, like, I just don't understand the purpose of why you need so much ammo, especially I mean, a lot of people say for hunting purposes, you don't need that much ammo. Cool. And I get it, but it's about protection.
It is about
So,
protection. Okay, so last week's episode, I laid out a scenario. Well, I asked people to put themselves in their shoes of a business owner during the Ferguson and Baltimore riots. That's a perfect place, a perfect example of why anybody would need that much ammo, that many magazines, and have the ability to defend their property against a mob of people who simply seek to set the whole place on fire.
yeah, I mean, that's a that's a very good point. I just feel like it would be outlandish to just let like a 50-year-old person, male or female, to just post up in the corner of their work and anyone that walks in. But I mean, at the end of the day, I mean, maybe that's how you stop it.
That's exactly how you stop it. Because if we don't have weapons to if we don't have weapons to defend ourselves with, the first thing that we do is call the police, who bring weapons that we would otherwise have to defend ourselves. The simple fact that if we can't do it, we call someone who can, that right there should be enough to say, yeah, we would like, there is a need out there because we never know what type of situation we're going to find ourselves in. And, you take any of the past examples of mass shootings, and imagine if somebody were there, just happened to be there with equal firepower at the same time, and whose sole purpose was he was there and he just happened to be carrying. Now you have, instead of 17 dead, maybe 2 or 3.
Right. Yeah, and I mean, I like I said earlier, I love the idea. It's just I just know not everyone. I mean, I went to a big high school. We had like 2,000 plus people in my high school. I cannot imagine every single one of those people like having a gun, and obviously all of them wouldn't. I'm just saying some people have absolutely no purpose to be able to buy a gun, and they can.
The
You know?
problem is, though, it's not a right for a select few, it's a right for everybody.
Right. Exactly.
If you allow the government to define winners and losers in this area, then they can make anybody a loser. We've had a few years back, we had the IRS targeting conservative groups during elections to help suppress them. And right now, under current law, we have a list of, quote, prohibited persons. And this includes, right now, anybody, quote, addicted to marijuana. The fact that the government can define a prohibited person as somebody who likes to smoke a plant is asinine. And it would not take much more for them to say, okay, anybody who reads the Constitution is now a prohibited person. I know that's outlandish and extreme, but I'm trying to illustrate a point here. Because they have the power to define who a prohibited person is, they can make that definition mean anything. And that's the problem that I have. That right there is tyranny. And that's the very reason that the Second Amendment was written, to protect our right, not grant our right, but to protect our right from the government. And that's all that we've seen since the first gun control laws in 1934 is nothing but infringements on our right. And you may not like it. You might not like the fact that, Bob down the street, who you think he's not really the brightest of person. You might not like the fact that he has the right to bear arms, but he has the same right that you do. And he should have that right. Because the second that his right is stripped away because of whatever reason, then the government can then, if they so choose, come and take that right away from you. That's why it is a right and not a privilege. And that's why it should be treated as a right and not a privilege. We're both veterans. We fought for this country, and We love this country. We love what this country stands for. Nothing upsets me more than watching a bunch of entitled 20 something year old socialists burning the American flag and citing Karl Marx. Okay. It really, really irritates me.
Right.
However, they have the right to do that because freedom is not a beautiful thing if you really think about it. Freedom is not the Veterans Day parade with everybody waving American flags and the floats with all the World War II and Vietnam vets running down Main Street. Freedom are those 20 something millennials burning the American flag at that parade in protest. Now, they might get the crap beat out of them. That's a whole different issue. But the fact that there is no legal ramifications for them to protest that is the very definition of freedom. And that's what makes freedom both beautiful and ugly. It's not, we don't grant liberty on the basis that we all agree. And that's kind of the essential crux whenever you get down to everything. That is what liberty is. Just because you agree with all of the tyrannical laws that are in place doesn't mean that it's liberty. It still is tyranny. It just means that it's tyranny that you agree with. You know what I mean?
Right. Okay, so can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
So, and just say that they do constitutional carry, you can be 18 to buy a firearm. Or no, sorry, you can't constitutional carry, and you have to take an LTC class in order to carry, and they raise it to 21. Don't you still think that the 16-year-old, the 18-year-old, the 20-year-old, however old, if they want to do it, they're going to do it? Like, don't you think they're going to get their hands on a weapon somehow, some way?
Yes, absolutely.
Me too. And so that's why I'd 100% do, like I said, because they will find a way. These people that do this, they obviously have problems that are bigger than just, stubbing their toe that morning. And so that's why I'm saying you can't legislate evil, and it's going to happen, and they'll find a way. So if we put, breathalyzers before you buy guns, okay, well, they'll have, they won't drink with that day, or, you know what I mean? And if you put school, like 3 extra armed guards in all the schools, which is a crap ton, including all the elementary schools and everything, you know what I mean? It's like they'll just figure out a way, unfortunately.
It is unfortunate, but you're absolutely right. Evil will always find a way. Timothy McVeigh found a way and didn't use a single firearm. He killed 168 people in 1995 and injured over 600. I believe it was like 680 that he injured. And he used a rental truck and some fertilizer. Evil finds a way. And so I guess my ultimate question to you is, if you acknowledge that evil will find a way no matter what sort of laws and gun controls we have on the books, why do you support those laws being on the books? Don't they just infringe upon us?
Exactly. And so, and I just try to keep an open mind to it, because I know at the end of the day, I did all the steps to get my license to carry. I did all the steps, and it didn't bother me that much. I wasn't in a rush to take a pistol to class with me or conceal whenever I go out. Like, and I understand, like you said, about the restraining order. There's people that need protection now, because things happen. So I'm a little, I guess I was patient with it. I didn't need it, and I didn't need it in one day. I was fine waiting the 2-3 weeks.
Okay, but that doesn't really answer my question. If you acknowledge that they're still going to find a way, why do you support these types of laws being enacted or currently on the books?
Strictly just because I don't agree. This will be my argument every time. I just don't agree with some of the people I know. Like, some of the people I know have zero right. Not I know, hang out with. I'm saying some of the people I went to high school with, like, they have zero, like, They just should not be touching a weapon that can fire off 30 rounds per minute. You know what I mean? And I just feel like that's a threat. That's just because I get it, the good guys, get them for the good guys, but not. I don't know, but I get it. I mean, they're gonna get their hands on it, so
Okay. If they're so inclined, they're going to be able to find a way to bypass all the laws anyway.
exactly. And that's what it is. It's a controversial topic discussion.
Okay. Well, I mean, I appreciate everything that we've talked about here. I I would like to have more of this with anybody that I can. And while I clearly don't agree. I mean, you're definitely entitled to your opinion. That's fine. Even though I adamantly believe that what you're saying is against our founding principles. But you know, that's your opinion, and I would never want you to give anything else. Are you open-minded enough to could you see yourself, or are you able, would you be able to see yourself with our mindset that all of this is wrong, and no matter how much I don't like it, it doesn't change the fact that all of these laws are wrong?
Like, are you asking me if I'm do I have an open enough mind to pretty much agree with y'all?
Basically, yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Okay.
Like
Well,
I see 100% where you're coming from because and I agree with you. It's just like I said, there's just people out there that have no right, and any rule regulation that you can implement to make that process for them to get a gun harder, whether it's their older brother who can't buy him a gun yet because he's not 18, or I don't know, but it's a I just feel like something needs to change though to stop the all the killing.
well,
Because the good, the guys that all the guys that or all the humans that get their license to carry, you know what I mean? Then I mean less than like 2% is involved with people that have LTC.
yeah, it's actually less than I think 0.2%, but that's semantics at this point. The
Yeah,
basically
it's
what it
way
boils
smaller.
down to is sometimes there is nothing that can be done. And that's historically what has been the case whenever it comes to gun violence. First of all, as I said last week, gun violence is not an issue in this country. Violent crime in and of itself, with a firearm, without a firearm, is not a significant problem in this country. The media portrays it as it is, but it's not. And because it's not, there's no real solution to it. I mean, until we break, I don't know, 0.75%, which we're nowhere near that as far as violent crime is concerned. Uh, right now, let me pull it up here. Our violent crime rate in this country, with and without a firearm, is 0.361%. That's
So
so insignificant. It's so
very
insignificant.
that's a tiny number.
Tiny. That's all violent crime. That's rape, robbery, aggravated assault, homicide, you name it. That is all violent crime according to FBI statistics. That is that is such a tiny and insignificant number. I don't know how we can uh, think that it is an issue and that something needs to be done. And even if something did need to be done, the answer is not legislation. A lot of people default to that because, oh, it's easy. We'll just pass a law. Well, it's already illegal to rob somebody, so we'll see how good that legislation did to protect you. The reason that we have laws like homicide, uh, robbery, theft, things like that, those acts infringe upon the rights of others. If you come up to me and shoot me in the face for no reason, that infringes upon my right to live. Okay? There should be a punishment established for an action that infringes upon another person's right, that directly infringes upon another person's right. You possessing a firearm, going about your day, doesn't infringe upon my right in any way. Even if I am a militant leftist, communist, socialist, you name it, who doesn't like guns in any way, just because I see you with a gun on your hip does not mean that it's infringing upon my liberty to live. It's in its holster, and it's doing nothing. It's an inanimate object, and until you start pointing it at me, I can kick and scream all day, and it's still not going to infringe upon my liberty, no matter how much I don't like it. And
Right.
that essentially boils down everything. And I wish that, to be honest, I wish that more people were like you and open-minded enough to have discussion on these topics, or at minimum, not even necessarily open-minded, because quite frankly, I'm pretty close-minded on this. I am, I've done a lot of research on history and statistics, and the more research I do, the more resolve I feel this way. The more resolute I am, and the more steadfast I am whenever it comes to my position. So I'm pretty closed-minded on this issue, to be completely honest. But I do think that we should at least be able to defend our positions as deeply as we can, get down to all of the unintended consequences that we might experience, get down to the nitty-gritty, and at the very end, if we can still defend our position, then we've reached a conclusion. And I think the vast majority of people, and don't take this the wrong way, I'm not trying to be insulting. I think the vast majority of people are similar to you in that they hear these ideas and they think it sounds good, so they kind of get on board with it because it sounds like a good idea, but they never actually delve down into it deeply. So again, I don't mean that to be insulting.
Oh no, I mean it's definitely true. A lot of people here. Oh, right. I mean, you saw Florida; they immediately raised their age to buy a firearm to 21, and that was probably strictly out of they wanted to react real quick.
Right. Well, yeah, you're absolutely right. So uh, that's why I think these discussions are incredibly important, because we do need to talk about it. We need to identify if there is a problem, which I've maintained that there's not. We need to identify what types of controls people would like, and delve those down as deeply as possible. And to be honest, I really, really appreciate you coming on. I think this has been a great discussion, and I don't expect that I changed your mind on anything, but I at least hope, at minimum, that I got you maybe thinking a little bit deeper about some of the things that we talked about.
Oh, I mean, I definitely learned something.
Well, that's good.
Yeah,
Learning is essential.
very.
uh,
Yeah, no, I like to get my opinion out there, and then so I can, because if I'm never talking to anyone who's 100% for or against gun control, then how am I ever going to be able to shape up my, you know, opinion?
exactly. And that is everything that I'm talking about right there. And I really appreciate it. Anyway, I don't want to take up any more of your time. I think we've talked at a pretty good length about some of your philosophies, and I really appreciate everything that you've talked about. I appreciate the discussion, even though we disagree. That's fine. I just wanted to say thank you for coming on and talking with me.
Yeah, I thanks for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Hey, no problem. The pleasure's all mine. That's going to do it for me for this week, ladies and gentlemen. Next week, we're going to have the commanding officer of one of the local militias here in Texas on the program to talk about the extreme position of the Second Amendment. And I don't say that to be derogatory. He is preparing for should the worst case ever happen, and good on him for that. If you'd like to be on the program, please reach out to me on Facebook, Twitter, email me at derek@lonestargr.com. and let me know what you'd like to talk about. I'll do my best to have you on, and we will have a wonderful discussion just like I had today. Until next time, Lone Star Gunners, arm yourself with knowledge and share the ammo.